Help if I turn the mic on. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the February Service Committee meeting. Bob, would you please call roll?
Good morning, directors. When I call your name, will you please indicate your attendance? Director Stinson? Here. Director Quick?
Present.
Director Gardner?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to start today by introducing our newest board member, Bill Stinson. We're grateful to receive the benefit of Bill's time and expertise on the board and this committee, and we look forward to working together with you. I know we'll be doing more formal introductions at the board meeting, so for now, we'll just say welcome, and we're glad to have you. Before we dive into today's agenda, I would like to address a few important changes regarding the Service Committee. We've implemented some notable adjustments to the Service Committee meeting dates, cadences, and overall focus for 2025. These changes are part of our ongoing efforts to ensure that our committees are aligned with the organization's evolving needs and goals. We will be meeting every other month this year and focusing on more in-depth presentations, which I'm particularly excited about, and discussions about IndyGo's service and performance. As such, you will notice that we will no longer be formally introducing action items or voting on consent agendas. All items requiring action from our board will go to the full monthly board meetings. This committee will hear only information items. Are there any comments or questions? Hearing none. Now let's get started with today's meeting to provide information items. Information item 1 is presentation on ride safe enhancements by our Chief Operating Officer.
Good morning, directors. Good morning, Mr. Chairman Gardner. Aaron Vogel, Chief Operating Officer for IndyGo. It's a pleasure to kick off the Service Committee for 2025. And as you mentioned, kind of have more of a casual conversation, more in-depth presentation, and more informal discussion about what we're doing at the staff level to provide service for our customers. And today, we're going to kick it off with a discussion on Ride Safe and some enhancements that we have planned for 2025 and beyond. And what those are, it's really just reimagining and evolving with our conditions that we're working with today, and trying to maximize our resources while also maintaining cost neutral to the best of our abilities and enhancing the customer experience. Next slide. Thank you. And so, as I mentioned, we're trying to evolve over the last couple of years. We've had some environmental changes and some new challenges, essentially, where we've had increased interactions both with passengers, with other passengers, and passengers with employees that have prompted, real and perceived concerns with safety and security, essentially, with our services. And we are evolving, and we're looking at the data, and we're seeing that this is a trend and where we need to focus our efforts, essentially. And so we're not agnostic to that, and we wanted to address and kind of evolve with those and reimagine and revisit how we're addressing those types of challenges. And so I would be remiss to remind the committee that, we transport millions of people, over 7 million boardings and trips we've had last year that we transported individually safely through our system, and we continue to do so. And we do that with a lot of different great practices that we have in place today, but we want to take it a step further and want to talk about that today and throughout the course of the year. And so next slide. So today, I'm just gonna want to talk about level set what we're doing today, and then talk about what we have planned for 2025 and beyond. So currently, right now, in our safety practices for employees and our passengers, we go through a significant amount of de-escalation training for new hires, both operators and frontline supervisors, as well as refresher training every year for them. We also have installed barrier doors for our operators on the buses to separate operators from passengers and make kind of like a little separate compartment for them, if you will. The third item is we spend a significant amount of we have a significant amount of investment on contracted security, both fare inspectors, law enforcement officers, and armed officers, to the tune of about $7 million annually, to provide security for our employees as well as our passengers throughout our system. The fourth item is we have a significant and robust camera infrastructure system where we have hundreds of cameras deployed throughout our system on our facilities, as well as all of our buses in our network, both paratransit and fixed route operations. And then we have a significant, robust, if you notice coming into our buildings, we have a very robust access control system that is broken down to the job classification level here, and only certain parts you can get into from the public standpoint.
Aaron,
yes.
what's been the feedback on the training, the de-escalation training? How has that been?
The training is good, and it's very a real world environment, so it can be rated R sometimes, and so it's really beneficial, and people really like the refresher because it's a real world training and simulated environment. The feedback is they would love to get it more, and it's a great tool. And in fact, what we've done is we are working to invest in even more training and going through all-day training. So right now it's about 2 hours long is our standard state of practice today. And right now we have a contract in place with some experts in the industry to spend the whole entire day working on this essentially. And then with that training, we're going to train the trainers. So then we can re-deliver it back to our personnel in-house and expand that basically. And we're looking to also go from annual refresher to do quarterly refreshers for our frontline supervisors, so they can be refreshed on that sort of techniques and to address with escalated scenarios.
That might be a good experience for some of us on this committee to go through and to experience.
Okay, appreciate the feedback. That's good. Again, this is meant to be a conversation discussion, so I welcome that. That's what we're looking to gain here. So I will take note of that. I know I have the CEO down as well for participating in some of that.
Guys, come on with me.
Aaron, I do have a question on the contracted security and presence. Is that currently on, is there security on every bus, or is it just determined by what the need may be, what the trends may have been on a particular route?
Yeah, so the security is on the buses in two different formats. One from fare inspection standpoint, particularly on our bus rapid transit, because it's off board fare collection system. So they're doing validations on the buses. And we're looking to, and we'll talk about that later on, change the look and feel of that a little bit more. And that's one of the things we're kind of want to reimagine in 2025 is how that look and feel is for the contracted security workforce. And then we also have law enforcement officers. They actually have to go to the platforms and scan to create visual presence in the system. And they do randomized rides on our buses for safety, for sensitive security information reasons. I will not disclose where that adds, but we look at our problem locations and areas, and we actually have officers on the buses during certain times and dates and locations. And then we have the officers monthly just do random operator and passenger contacts, which is just as simple as just walking on the bus, make their presence, say hi, just so that they integrate within our network essentially and make them as visual as possible. Now, I will share for full transparency, one of the things we're looking to gain with Ride Safe is more presence, because the feedback we get from the employees and even passengers sometimes is they don't see them enough. They want to see more presence.
In your opening remark, you said the number of, I'm not sure you will use the word complaints, but the number of roads.
Yes.
Roughly from what to what?
That's a tough one to answer just because the reporting metric has changed a little bit, but the number of negative interactions have increased. I will call it negative interactions for today. And those numbers have increased for two reasons. One, the environment and society has changed over the last 3-4 years with COVID, one. And two, in our data analysis that you'll see in some of the monthly operations board reports that we provide to the board, the increase of assault specifically has more than tripled, primarily because the definition of what an assault is has finally been defined from a national perspective through National Transit Database. And now that it's defined, we can, as an agency, better track that. And now we're tracking it with other peers as well. So it's very difficult to look at peers as well because we all started this new data collection methodology in 2023 first. And since then, I thought my mic was not working. Ah. um, Got to start all over. Yeah. um, And so we're kind of like now starting to stabilize what the data looks like. But from the onset, we had seen the increase. And just to give an example of the definition changes, what we had tracked historically over the previous decades was an assault was more of a physical connection. And now the definition is any sort of confrontation that's negative that interacts or interferes with the operation of revenue service is actually dictated as an assault. So if there is a verbal dispute or confrontation that stops the bus, requires the driver to call in for support for supervisor, law enforcement, that would be considered an assault. Or if a passenger spat on an employee or another passenger and there was a bio on the bus from the spat, that would stop revenue service. That would be constituted and classified as an assault. So because of that new methodology of tracking is out there, it has increased our data trends and our collection of incidences.
And how does the public register their feelings on?
The public does that to the best of their abilities through our customer onboard surveys that we do. Depending on what the surveys are, we do standardized ones every 5 years for our service planning purposes. And then we do onboard surveys. We did one in 2023, was it? Our last one. And we do a customer perception survey. And it's all perception based, right? Everyone's feeling of safety is completely different, but that is how the customers report that. And then they also have, which is stealing my slide later on, is one of our strategic themes for improvement is crowdsourcing customer feedback, actually. And customers have the ability to report issues through the customer comment process. And customers do, believe it or not, report illegal activity at stations and illegal behaviors or confrontations and thefts and things of that nature. So there is tools out there. And fast forwarding through my presentation, one of the things we want to do is better market that opportunity to get more crowdsourcing information from the public. No, that's okay. Hey, you brought my mic into play, so that's good.
Hey, Bill, you may want to turn on your mic next time so that we can register your question.
Okay. The other thing we got going on, we have the ability to actually ban passengers that cause problems in our system. We can do that for the end till the end of the service day. And then we also work with the court systems where we can trespass passengers if they become a problem. We don't really like to go that route, but we have that authority. It's a current state of practice that we have. We also have a significant dozens of support supervisors that help with 24/7 on-street response to our operators and passenger problems on the buses as well as on our platforms. Thanks to our bus rapid transit system infrastructure, we have over 50 plus emergency blue phones, which is the opportunity to, like you see at college campuses, multi-campus facilities, where if there's an emergency, you can hit a blue phone or a blue button, right, and call emergency services. It goes directly to our dispatch, which coordinates directly with emergency services call center.
Aaron, who has access to the blue phones? Is it the drivers? Is it at the bus stops? Is it on the
Anybody
bus?
that can get to it. It's all completely open to the public.
And they're on the buses or?
They're on the platforms and at our transit center. So every bus rapid transit station has one. It's typically at the opposite end of the station where the fare box is. So one area's got the ticket vending machine, and then the other area's got the the station map, and then the blue phone button and speaker. Next step in our Ride Safe program over the last year was we embarked on a new initiative where we brought on board our first time ever, our social service coordinator, to respond to incidences, but with the right resources, because not everything requires us to deal with moving them off the bus necessarily. Sometimes it's about getting them the resources they need, and transit's not always their need, essentially. And then last but not least, we always make sure that we consider crime prevention through environmental design. We have staff in-house for that. And I also just recently became a professional designated SEPTA person. And then through our architectural and engineering firms, we always make sure our design work includes SEPTA with those designs as we build out projects as well. So we start from the front end of our projects with crime prevention in mind. Next slide. And so with all of that, as I mentioned, things are evolving the last couple of years. We want to evolve with that. And so what we think our next step for 2025 is in evolving with that and keeping our passengers and employees safety at top of mind, which I should have started earlier. Just a recap for some of the new board members. Our mission for IndyGo is provide safe, reliable, and accessible services. And so to continue on that front, to move forward with safety, we have 5 general themes, if you will. And I say general themes because these are just kind of the tip of the iceberg, and they'll get further in depth and in detail as we talk through the year. I just want to set the framework right now for the initial conversation today to get everyone prepared for what's to come throughout 2025. And so as you look at these themes 1 through 5, 1 being see something, say something, 2, proactive security surveillance, 3, new law enforcement at senior leadership roles, and then 4, zero tolerance to passenger misconduct, and 5, laws that impact employee, riders, and safety. Keep in mind that this is also kind of going from near-term to long-term strategies as well. So at the top of the list are kind of some low-hanging fruit items that we can do immediately, we're working on immediately, and we'll have some near-term improvements. And then when we get to like 3 and 4 and 5, those are pretty in-depth discussions and strategies that we have. And again, I just want to touch on just kind of the high-level items because we have some playbook of some more initiatives that we'll talk through in meetings to come. So next slide. The first one here is thanks to Director Stinson's forward thinking. We're trying to get the customers' feedback essentially and do some crowdsourcing. Like I mentioned, we have a customer comment process where people are invited to respond through online portals or through our customer care system online or over the phone. And that's typically done 7 days a week through banking hours. And we don't actually advertise that we want to hear about things such as illegal activities and crimes or a suspicious package left on a bus. But believe it or not, people actually report that. It's fantastic. And we respond immediately to those types of things that are that warrant immediate response. And so we want to take that opportunity and take it a step further and really market that this is a tool. And we want to encourage really the public to provide additional information so we can better respond to some issues and track trends that are out in the network. And then to further expand this too, internally, we have to kind of revisit how we manage the comments because like I mentioned, we get this 7 days a week kind of expanded banking hours, which are more like 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. But we don't have an opportunity to do it at late night. And we want to make sure that if someone's going to respond to something and turn in something at 10 o'clock at night, we can immediately address that as well. So we're revisiting internally how we address customer comments related to security. I'm not going to go deep into the weeds on how we're going to do that, but we have an idea and we have a plan in place, and we want to pilot that for the next 30, 60 days, see how that workflow materializes, and then from there really launch a more formal see something, say something campaign. And then the third evolution of this concept is really to start to look at reducing barriers to be able to improve digital access and digital responding through like text messaging and live agents, which is a longer term strategy for see something, say something for crowdsourcing. For that, I pause on this slide before continuing to see if anyone has questions.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Aaron, what would you say to those? Because I know a lot of us are out in the community and we are, I think about my 88-year-old grandmother. How are we helping them? Do we still have some of the traditional means of communicating with us that, you know, maybe not everybody's as tech savvy?
Yeah, that is the primary tool right now, believe it or not. We are not as tech savvy in the customer comment field. We do the traditional phone call. So all of our 2,800 bus stops have our phone number on it, and you can call and talk to a live agent. So that's pretty old school. I think she would appreciate that one. The other one is through in-person communication, right? You can go to our transit center, you can go to our headquarters and actually talk with someone. And we have a very friendly staff that's willing to talk and help provide the guidance they need as well.
Good.
See, no other questions. Next slide, please. The second theme is really taking a look at all that great infrastructure that I mentioned about all these camera feeds all over our city. Literally hundreds of cameras we have fed around our city. And right now what we do is we use that more for validation to determine preventability on incidences. And we use that in partnership with IMPD to help fight crime, but it's more of a reactive state. And so we want to take advantage of our infrastructure and do some job sharing among staff with our security contractors and look at the security proactively in camera rooms essentially and start to identify trends and habits happening on our buses in the future, but right now at least at our station. So that way we can deploy the limited resources we have and deploy them more effectively to our hotspots and to reduce response times significantly as well by knowing what's happening before it becomes a problem. And then also I would just add too, we want to, this is not on this slide, but we want to continue to work towards finding opportunities where we might be able to tie into some of our infrastructure with IMPD down the road as well, because they have a real-time crime lab operations where they're monitoring cameras throughout our entire city. And I know they're eager to get access to our system as long as we can create that bridge, and we want to try to see what kind of opportunities exist down the road for that one as well. Anything on this slide before proceeding?
I do have a question. So when you speak about proactively monitoring the camera feeds, right now, would it be correct to say that we just go back and look at them if there were an incident?
For the most part, yeah, it's really based on reactiveness, based on incidents, and then we'll look at that for training purposes, like what happened in that environment, how could we better respond to it, what did we do right, and create some lessons learned. From a proactive standpoint, what we do from camera monitoring is primarily on our facilities, like this campus right here, or our headquarters downtown transit center, or our bus depot that we're monitoring, and our guards are rotating from like walking inspections to camera inspections, but we're not actually doing it out in the field. And so we want to change that mindset and have them not only proactively look at our facilities, but the system itself out in the network. So yeah, so we're going from 100%. We're very reactive. We have very minimum resources, but there's opportunities to be more proactive. And we're not going to be able to watch everything. So we already know where our hotspots are and where to effectively utilize our time as well.
Thank you.
Yep. Next slide. The third one is very exciting, and this is something that's going to really take this ride safe, I think, to the enhancement to the next level here, which is introducing law enforcement to senior level of our organization. And so we've recently posted a senior director of security and enforcement, requiring a law enforcement background to really look at how we're doing things internally to make sure we're aligned with law enforcement externally, and how to better effectively manage our resources and our partnership opportunities, right? Like, we are a huge organization. We're moving 7 million people annually, and we have assets all over town. We can't do this on our own. We have to be a partner with everybody out in the community, and having someone with this background is critical to increasing our collaboration and our community partnership, and having the network as well, right? Like, that's critical. And so we want to be a partner with IMPD and others within the community. The other component to this is what our look and feel of security operations look like. Like, right now, we're doing inspections on the buses, and it's very reactive, but we want to modify that approach and modify them to be more of an ambassador, where they're dealing with education of customers, and instead of being on the buses, they're actually on the platform. Being on the platform, you can capture more interactions, and it creates more presence, even if there's not a passenger encounter, right? They're physically seen as someone approaches, and it's a deterrent to come up and not pay as well sometimes, right? So we want to change that look and feel. And in the process of that, there's an opportunity to take that modification from inspector to ambassador to maybe even make them transit security, essentially. And then we start looking at arrest powers. Do they have arrest powers? Do they not, right? And so I have some ideas. I know Jenny has some ideas. We all have ideas, but I think it's really critical that we have someone with a law enforcement background to be a part of that conversation and lead that effort, whether we changed that or not. And so I'm really excited about bringing this new expertise on board and to be a part of the discussion in the future. They will report to myself. And we'll have more discussions on this one throughout 2025. This one's going to be a meaty topic, and it might warrant its own presentation in the future. Again, just the tip of the iceberg as we evolve. And then last, but not least for this particular slide, we also want to look at the efficiencies and our requirements in our contract for our contracted law enforcement right now. Do we have the right standards, right? IndyGo, up until 2016, when the transit center was built, didn't have security really at all. And so we went from 0 to 7 million pretty fast. We need to relook at that. I know our fiscal sustainability study will take a look at that as well. We just want to make sure we're being most effective as possible. Director
Aaron,
Stiffen?
the senior level law enforcement person, you said that job has been posted?
It has been posted. It's been posted for about a month now.
So that's not a concept, that's happening.
It's material. Yeah, some of this stuff is already in works and materializing, absolutely. And that some of the bigger meaty items we don't want to do without the committee's involvement. But those types of smaller ones and incremental steps we are making and progressing
It'll
with.
also it seems like it would make sense to have that person on board before some of these other things happen.
Absolutely. Yep. 100%. So that's why we're not going to go deeper into the discussion about the reimagining of inspectors, ambassadors, and transit security just yet. We want to get them on board. I would have report with excitement. We've gotten over 60 applicants. And so we're looking forward to starting that interview process here soon. Next slide. The next one is something that we do ongoing, but we have a lot of opportunity to improve, and that is really just taking a more of a hard stance, line in the sand with a zero tolerance approach to misconduct. And the misconduct can be real simple things such as, did the customer pay the right fare? Are they listening to music and eating food on the bus? Are they joyriding? Are they acting appropriately? Are they dealing and adhering to our code of conduct, which I like to call our code of comfort, to put a warmer spin on it? And taking a harder line in the sand on how we approach that, both with the operators as well as the supervisors, but also enforcement, right? There's an opportunity as we reimagine what transit security looks like. Is there an opportunity where we can do better enforcement? Because What is clear is that, law enforcement is trained to enforce local, state, and federal laws. That's their role. And they also have limited resources, so they're focused on criminal as well, which we support. But we have our own rules and code of conduct, which is, eating and smoking on the bus is not acceptable, right? We can't get law enforcement to support, nor do we want them to be support. We want them to support, but they have other priorities, right? But there's an opportunity with our resources in-house to better enforce some of that stuff. And so that will be part of the conversation with what transit security looks like in the future. But we got to better enforce it internally, some of our code of comfort. And then last but not least is really to make sure that we have people set up for success by having effectively working technology, if you will. We want to reduce the barriers from customers and allow them the opportunity to do the right thing and have working technology, such as fair equipment type things. And so I would like to highlight some of, Director Stinson mentioned that we're moving forward with a few things already. Some of the pictures on your screen here are some of those things. And that is a pilot that we have going. We're very excited about this. This has been a year and a half actually in the making. And this is a picture of a monitor above the driver's compartment on side of a bus. So the view that you're seeing is actually a passenger walking on board a bus as if they're going to pay their fare. They would see the driver in that picture off to the right. The driver's not in the seat. But what you see is a display screen, and that display is showing essentially the person that boards the bus. It's showing them a picture of themselves. It's a reminder and a deterrent that, hey, if you didn't know you were on camera, you really are on camera. Smile for the camera, essentially. It gives that self-checkout Target effect, right? That you get when you go through Target and check out there. And so I have seen with other agencies significant improvement. In fact, in Oakland, they've had an increase or a reduction of assaults by 50% on employees by just this technique. And so right now we're in pilot stage on 2 buses. And what we're doing is trying to do proof of concept on the monitor technology to make sure it can withstand, the road elements and the bumps and the weather, the cold and the warm days, essentially. So once we validate the monitors that can handle our ruggedness requirements, we'll deploy that across our entire system.
And what are these upgrades roughly costing?
So everything, I was wondering if anyone would pick up on this, because everything has mostly been cost neutral so far up until this part. The monitors are about $400 or $500. On the 40-foot fixed route buses, the camera that you see in the upper left part of the screen is actually already installed. So we tapped into our current, again, we're trying to maximize our current resources. For the bus rapid transit system, that one requires a modification and a standalone camera. So that one we're still going through pricing on, but a camera is $1,000 roughly, and a couple $100 for the monitor. And for BRT, we have 59. So as we expand it, we likely come back to ask for approval for that if this pilot is successful. But it is fairly cost neutral still out besides this one, the Ride Safe program.
Aaron, I want to go back real quick to the current state and just to make sure I understand what the definition of the operator protective door barriers are. As I look at like the notice regarding any assault on a IndyGo employee is a crime, understanding, that the definition of assault that we've further defined that, but on each bus, is there an actual protective door that's protecting the driver?
There is. And so there's actually 3 different design versions of our operator doors. They started originally more from a protective barrier for contaminants from COVID. And then we evolved with our design. I'm not going to go into the details, but we have them. And our latest design and our future design plan that we have on all of our new buses going forward require the door to be shut. You cannot drive the bus without the door being shut. The older versions and models allow a driver to have that choice. It's debatable by some operators, and some days with the union even, we have the discussion whether they have that option or not. But our stance going forward is the data shows it's very protective and the results are positive when the door is shut, and we want to have the door shut essentially. And so that is the standard going forward. And they're more robust. They go from the ceiling to the floor. Some of the other versions, you could kind of reach your hand around certain areas. And what we're doing also is on those particular barrier doors is where we're putting the sticker that any assaults notice. We're going to actually put that on the doors, the barrier doors, to put that front and center. It's not a heightened crime, but it's still a crime and it's still a problem. It's still not acceptable. And sometime for the honest 80%, they just need a reminder. And so that's what we're trying to achieve with that one. And I believe we landed on a 5x7 size for that one. Excellent. Next slide. And then the fifth one really is a long-term strategy, but it's already starting in terms of conversations with external stakeholders, and that is really to better seek to understand what type of laws are out there that hinder us and could also help us. Like what is needed in order to have our own trespassing rights, specifically at our facilities that are public right of way, and then also what does it take to have a paid fair zone ordinance? The other areas to understand and explore, as we already started down this path, but we'll continue to, is what can and can't we do in terms of weapons on buses? Right now, people can carry guns on buses. That makes some people uncomfortable, both employees and passengers. And so we're faced with that, and we have to evolve with that and see what we can and can't do, essentially. And so we're continuing that conversation as well. And then the third item on this slide is really along with communicating to the public that you can't assault our employees, that's not acceptable. Is there opportunities to increase the penalties for those types of assaults? And so through conversations already, we're seeing this as a systemic problem with a lot of public frontline workers. And so there is support that there should be maybe some increased penalties on crimes on some frontline workers. And so this there's not gonna be a change overnight, but it starts with conversations with the board, with other elected officials, and really understanding our peers and those that are impacted by this that have a desire to increase penalties as well. So we continue to seek and understand some of these laws, and then really what other transit agencies are doing that are successful, not successful, so we can tap into that to improve the safety, the reliability, and accessibility of our customers' experience. And so that is high level, just kind of the framework of the 5 key strategies that we want to that we are currently moving forward with and want to continue to expand and talk about with this committee in 2025. So again, I know it's kind of a long presentation, but also wanted to set the framework for the year, keep it as high level as possible, but also share that next steps. I want to come back the next service committee, which is April, continue to give you an update of additional progress we've made to date in the 2 months from today, as well as start to establish some key performance indicators, start to compile some data so we can start to measure success with our programs, and then also take our current data that we have available that some folks might not be looking at and bring it front and center and bring it part of this conversation, because we do report a lot through the monthly board reports through safety, security, but we just want to make it more purposeful and align it together and talk more about that next time we meet for next steps. And with that, I concludes my information presentation. Happy to hear any comments, questions, or feedback from the group.
Thanks, Aaron. Are there any questions or comments? I think we got a lot of those out. Excellent. That we will move on now to information item I6, which is an update on our paratransit operations and maintenance transitioned by our Deputy Chief Transportation Officer.
Good morning, directors. My name is Mike Roth, Deputy Chief Transportation Officer. Wanting to give you an update on the transition plan and where we are. As you are aware, March 1st, MV Transportation takes over our IndyGo Access Paratransit program. We have 15 days until that glorious March the 1st. MV is mostly right over here in the house, along with Chris Hollingsworth, our MAC chair as well. No pressure on March the 1st, but anyway. So a lot goes into the implementation or the transition of a new contractor, especially as it relates to paratransit. I like to equate it to when you have a orchestra or you have a choir. Each section creates beautiful music, beautiful sounds, but it takes the entire group, my hands. It takes the entire group when they come together to be able to pull off this harmonious, beautiful presentation sound. And that's what we're expecting on March the 1st. Again, no pressure. MV has been working extremely hard over the past several weeks. The contract went into effect on December the 27th? I believe so. January 27th. And again, with the start date of March the 1st of 2025. There are a lot of items on here, and I'm not going to go through each and every one, but I did want to do just some high level. We have key activities accomplished and then upcoming activities. So most important is that the introduction and the involvement of the MAC. I know Shamika Brown, who is the GM, raise your hand, thank you, has reached out to Greg and Chris, and everyone on the MT side has met Greg. I keep saying Greg, I'm so sorry. Chris this morning, so they did a nice introduction. We also are planning to include Chris on the rest of the transition plan meetings for the remainder until March the 1st. So we're excited that he's agreed to be involved, and we look forward to his input and the entire MAC's advice and recommendations as they are users of the system. Other updates are just the hiring centers have been established. So MV has used the Marriott as kind of a platform for hiring. They are also established here over in the C building, and they have a spot in our B building, and they're doing recruitment. As we have talked in these transitions, bringing over existing employees, incumbents, is always been the primary goal. And they have done that, and they are currently doing that. And they've also been successful in recruiting and bringing on additional bodies. So the goal for March the 1st is to have 75 operators. And as we are moving right now, they are on target, which is a great thing. So again, this is all for the seamless transition to our customers. Mr. Gardner, did you have a question?
I did. You were anticipating my response. I was just going to ask Mike, how many operators were we able to retain in the transition, and then how many are they trying to recruit now?
Sure, that's a great question. And if I can get to that in another
Oh,
slide or so.
Sorry, I'm
I'll be
jumping
able to
ahead. I'm
actually tell
sorry.
you some numbers. But for the most part, the majority of the incumbents, current incumbents, were able to come over. Of course, there'll be a few exceptions because they each still have to go through MV's qualification process and hiring process. But for the most part, all of the existing staff, with the exception of some of the management personnel, should come over with MV. So we're looking very forward to having that seamless, again, support. Individuals that have been here, operators been here for 20 plus years doing paratransit. So, again, subject matter experts, and they know they know the business. Several training initiatives. So with MV, each employee has to be retrained. MV Transportation has done observations when it comes to ride-alongs with operators, dispatch, just observing the communication on phones with customers back and forth, maintenance observations, making sure that the techs know what their jobs are and are good at keeping our buses running safe and reliable. So that's been an ongoing strategy, if you will, to ensure that by March the 1st and even after March 1st, there'll be additional training that comes up. You know, there's always recertifications that go on that MV will make sure that gets done, either where that's an annual recert or a biannual recert. But, you know, that all does get done. Contracts. So this contract, we made a small change in the contract that MV will be responsible for any subcontracts that they have or they need to be able to successfully pull off the operations and provide our customers with esteemed service. So one of the contracts that they have currently signed is People's Transit. They are a DBE, and I call them a broker of people. So they will provide MV Transit with maybe 10 to 12 additional people who will operate our bus. So it's another staffing resource. Last I heard, they were in contract or finalizing contract, and I don't have an update yet, but I will get an update soon on Silver Ride. Silver Ride, again, is another people broker, if you will, and this is just to help with the staffing shortages that we have seen since COVID. You know, the companies will supply the bodies, we supply the vehicles, MV does all the required training for all the employees, including people first, so that they can operate our vehicles and know our service area.
Silver Ride.
So more updates to come on Silver Ride. You know, I already talked a little bit about the observations and efficiency. That's critical to ensure that MV, as the new incumbent, is well aware of the opportunities for training and staff development. They continue to monitor and do that daily. Our implementation meetings, we hold 3 to 4 of those a week. So we are all well into the groove and the understanding of expectations. And again, if you look at that big orchestra and that choir, all the groups that come together, it takes all of us to pull this off. And I'm confident that by March the 1st, we will be ready to rock and roll. A little bit of music there. There's some, you know, equipment and vendor management that MV has done. You know, some equipment had to be ordered. Uniforms for MV have been ordered, and I believe we've actually received those uniforms. And this weekend, we are doing a third-party inspection for turnover of the vehicles that for our current incumbent, which is our ATP Dev, to MV. So that's going to be all this weekend. They will look at the vehicles, make sure they're safe, reliable. Per our contract, any deficiencies, our ATP Dev is required to repair those prior to transferring them over to MV. Next question,
I was
Director
just going to
Gardner.
ask about the maintenance, so I think you've answered my question, but does our maintenance also just kind of inspect those as well? Do we have some kind of?
Yes,
Yeah.
our maintenance team they do audits, frequent audits. They're all documented, and you know, and we have those housed, those paper housed in our system. So yes, we do.
Thanks.
All right. Next slide, please. All right, so this is the staffing matrix. And even with my glasses on, I can't see the screen. So let me go to my paper. Currently, the goal for operators is 75. In progress, we have 67 that, and this number it fluctuates a little bit. So this is as the date that I pulled this presentation together. 67 new hires that include the incumbents and people first. So the 10 to 12 people that I have spoke about with that DBE contract, they're included in this number. As you can see by the lines of the drivers, we have 32 of the 75 that look like they are in qualifications, or that might be of the 67. 4 are qualified, 23 in training, and 1 has been termed due to various reasons. So this again is just the matrix of their hiring status, so that when we get to March 1st, we should be at the goal for 75, along with all the other positions that are a part of the contract. You can see the need, you can see the progress, and what's in qualifications so far. So questions on the staffing?
Can you talk a little more about, you mentioned that there's 20 incumbents, which includes some people, staff?
People first.
People first.
Yes, that's included in that overall number, which is at 67 so
Okay.
far.
Okay.
So yeah, everything's kind of really combined in that number. It's just broken down a little differently on paper, but that 67 does include people's first.
So with the 67 anticipated additional new hires, I guess I want to be certain that as we're trying to get to the number of 75,
Yes.
are we hiring people's first as standbys, or I'm not clear on how that works.
Oh yeah, no, the current strategy for hiring is that the goal, again, is for MV to have 75 operators trained and ready to go for day 1 of service.
Mhm.
Now, it is possible that MV will overhire, as you had mentioned, the standbys. Standbys are wonderful to have just in case you have operator callouts, which, doesn't always happen, but it does happen. So those extras or those standbys will be able to cover the open routes. So it is possible, it is likely they will hire. And again, it's for different reasons, attrition, making sure that they have enough staff members. So that's all going to be baked into their hiring. By March 1st, the goal is to at least have 75 ready to go. And after March 1st, to build upon, based on the needs of the service, how many standbys, extra boards they will need to be able to pool the service.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next slide, please. This slide is just a little bubble timeline, startup timeline. We've kind of discussed most of this information already. Again, a lot of moving pieces, fleet and maintenance, fleet inspections. MV will be installing DriveCam or Mobile Eye, and that is a wonderful safety tool that they use to help with retraining of accidents or incidents. It's so sensitive that if I do a rolling stop, it's going to pick that up, and then it flags MV for a coaching opportunity for that operator, which is a great tool to have. EcoLane is our current system that we use for scheduling and dispatching of for paratransit. MV is going through some quick training to get caught up to speed on that process, and more so with the management team because the current employees already use that system, which again is nice when we bring people over. Operational readiness, that's what we're working on. Their payroll system has been put in place, so employees will be paid on when they take over the contract on March 1st, which is important. Run cuts, bids, that will be MV's responsibility to ensure that the coverage and the operators that we have cover all of our critical needs. So for example, we have peak periods, peak times. Monday through Friday morning typically is 5 a.m. to about 9 a.m. And then in the afternoon, it starts about 1:30 to about 6. And we do a lot of transportation to and from centers such as Goodwill, Easter Seals. There's others, I can't think of all the names, but there's several others that we do transport. So those are those peak times because everybody has to get to the center at a certain time and then picked up and taken home afterwards. And other than that, I believe that is all I have. So further questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Hey, Mike, just a thought. I'd make sure that on some of the training that we bake in,
Yeah.
because I know, I know that we're working on a condensed timeline and we have to have this service up, but I also know that sometimes you can miss a lot when it's all condensed, and I see a lot kind of condensed in the next few
Okay.
weeks. So just a thought, but
Yeah.
make sure that we're thinking about what future training would look like in order to make sure that all of these kind of coordinated efforts are really sticking and having
Sure.
the impact that we want them to.
Sure. And MV does have a robust training plan, again, that all operators, their maintenance team, dispatchers, they all go through. And that is for any new hire that they will go through. And it's a sign off. So at any point in time, I can do an audit, give me all your, signed off papers on who you've hired, trained, with all the notes. So I'll have access to be able to request that at any time.
Yep. Well, the exciting thing about this committee is that we get a chance to dig in a little deeper and look under the hood. So to our friends at MV, welcome, and we're excited to have you, but no, we're going to make you work hard. Thank you. Thank you. Other questions or comments?
How have you communicated with the facilities you serve that this transition is occurring?
Sure, that's a great question, and that is a part of our communication plan. However, the goal is a seamless transition. So there is not a name brand per se, even
Do
though
they know?
MB,
Do
it's
they
pretty
know?
much, sorry, business as usual. Yes, IndyGo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but there'll still be different people for contact, and those individuals will be introduced to each of the centers in case there are some concerns or issues. Yes.
Good, thank you.
Other questions or comments? I think we're good. Thank you, Mike.
Hey, thank you
Appreciate
all.
your presentation.
Thank you.
Next up is information item I-5. We will hear a mobility advisory committee update. Mr. Hollingsworth.
Good morning. The MAC is in kind of, as the MV comes in, we're kind of in a transitional stage as well. We are initiating some things. We're working with IndyGo on correcting some things that we felt needed to be corrected. We're getting some better communication. We're cooperating better. We are just making some adjustments now that are making the MAC more receptive to things that we hear from IndyGo, and will make the MAC a better advocacy agency for the clients, as well as have better communications with the board and IndyGo itself. And those are really the things that we're concentrating on at the moment.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Hollingsworth, and also wanted to thank you for your participation in the paratransit transition. I know that adds a bit more to your plate, but we know with the MAC's involvement, we'll see some success. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
Next up, and our final agenda item is information item I-4. Our Chief People Officer will provide us with an overview of the People and Culture Monthly Report.
Directors, I'm Rick Griffin, Chief People Officer. I'm excited to speak with you this morning about a number of things. Next slide. I'm excited to say, first of all, I recently completed my 8th month here at IndyGo. It's been fantastic, and part of that is we really looked at 2025 in a different way. So one of the first things I'm proud to announce that we are rebranding Human Resources. It will be rebranded as People and Culture. And the focus there will be on our people and also our committed to our culture. We've developed a new mission and vision statement that really speaks to the work that we're going to try to accomplish this year and also the years to come. All right, next slide. And a part of that is for us to really focus in. I really felt as I was having discussions with Jenny and our executive leadership team on what are those things that I think are really important to us. So there's 4 that we're going to be focusing on. First of all is our people. How do we attract, also develop and retain our people? Also our culture. How do we develop this culture where people really see IndyGo as a destination, a place they want to come, a place they want to contribute, and also a place they would like to retire? And also operational excellence. How do we develop more strategies around our processes and put things in place that will give us the opportunity to have this sustained success in the future? And then also data, really taking a strong and a deeper look at how we can look at data, but also more importantly, use data to make business decisions. In fact, that's really what our conversation today is going to be about, that 4th pillar, which is data. Next slide. So the first thing you're going to see here is just a snapshot. This is a snapshot of, at the end of Q4, what our IndyGo population looked like. You'll see more detail as you see your monthly reports, but this just kind of gets our conversation started. It gives you an understanding, directors, of what our population looks like, and allows you to see the breakdown in terms of union and also non-union as well. Okay, next slide. As we go through the rest of this presentation, you're going to see a story that's going to be told. And at the very end, I'll talk about that a little bit more in detail. So the next slide talks about our tenure. So as you look at the past 3 years, this gives you an indication of what the tenure has been of our employees. The first slide, this slide here is all of our employees. The next slide will be about coach operators. As you can see, 2024, 47% of our employees have been here 2 years or less. Okay. Next slide. The next slide is our coach operators, which of course, this is the lifeblood of the work we've done or we're doing, as you've heard the presentations throughout today. And we really took a strong and a deeper look at this population and really started to look at what this story was starting to tell us. And as you can see, 47% of our coach operators have been here 2 years or less. So you can start to see this story kind of unfolding as we go through the rest of the presentation. Okay, next slide. This slide looks at terminations and also hires. On the left is overall terminations and hires over the last 3 years at IndyGo. And you can see how the lines there are coming together, which presents opportunities for us to do some things differently. As you look at the one on the right, you'll see coach operators. You can see how those lines are coming together as well. It also presents an opportunity for us as well. Okay, next slide. And this is really where I think our conversation, where we have opportunity is. When I started to look at turnover, I really started to get really excited about what we were presenting, because you first have to start with awareness before you can get to action. So what this slide shares with you is if we look at our turnover the last few years, all employees is about 41%. Voluntary turnover, 21%, those are individuals who've left the organization for some reason. Involuntary turnover, those percentages is information that we've asked employees to leave for some reason. And then the orange slide there, the blue gives you the overall for coach operators, which is 31%. And you can see there the breakdown on involuntary and voluntary. So the story here is, I think, one that brings forth the following in terms of awareness. I think we have an opportunity to delve deeper, to take the next level down, to gather more information about our population, which is one, understand what keeps people engaged, why they want to stay at IndyGo, what brings them to IndyGo, which means we're going to have to go out and do an engagement survey, which we've not done here before, which I see as a fantastic opportunity for us. The next piece is also looking at only as engagement survey, but also looking at those individuals who start with us and stay with us through that first and 2 years. I think if you saw on the previous slide, there's something happening within those first 2 years. We need to survey those individuals and find out what's going on there. In addition to that, we need to also conduct an exit survey. This wouldn't be exit interviews, this is an exit surveys. Best practice shows that you gather your most accurate information from the employees after they have left the organization. Now, both of these will allow us to gather more accurate details that would then give us data for us to then develop retention strategies and also engagement strategies. This will take a little bit of an effort. We're going to have to put some money in the budget, which I'm working on right now, gathering the information, working with our procurement department. And then we'll have to go out and go through the normal procurement process and select vendors that can actually do this. And the reason why you do it that way is because third-party vendors are able to gather anonymous information. So that increases the level of trust, which allows you to gather more accurate information versus us just doing surveys internally. So I wanted to share this with you just as a first snapshot on awareness. Probably come back sometime later in the year or first of next year and talk about more action planning. But this gives us now awareness about our population and presents the opportunity for us to go out and do those engagement surveys and also do those exit surveys so that we can then eventually develop, which is something called an employee value proposition, which is, tells us, here's why people love working here. Here's why we need to focus on, it'll provide us with information that we can focus on that will keep people here, which then moves it from turnover to retention. Now the focus is on how do we retain people. So I wanted to share that with you as a snapshot, as awareness as we kick off 2025. I'll open it up for questions.
Thanks, Britt. Questions or comments for?
I have a few questions. First, I will say the new definition of people and culture. I'm excited to see that. It's always good to definitely keep our people in mind, and then just the culture of the organization as a whole. And it sounds like from the information that you shared that's your goal is to really work on what the culture of the organization is. So these graphics were great. You answered a lot of the questions that I already had. But I did have a question just in regards to, like, when we're talking about tenure and even turnover.
Sure.
Are there opportunities now for like mentorships? So with some of those more seasoned employees, are there opportunities, thinking about those who are in those first 1 to 2 years, as you mentioned, are there mentorship opportunities in place?
We don't have current mentorship opportunities in place, but those are things we're looking at. We wanted to start with really looking at the data first before we action plan too quickly. We wanted to make sure that we would come back to the senior leadership team with an actual plan on what we can do further. But one of the things that's come up is mentorships. Another thing that's come up is a buddy system. And there's been some other ideas that different folks within the organization have given us that we are taking a look at.
Thank you for that. Then the other point, which again goes back to the culture, and this again may be something that you plan to look at as you start to engage more with the team. You mentioned the surveys and how often you plan to do those, but even thinking about those opportunities for the team to not have to wait on a survey, but having really somewhat of an open door policy where they start to get comfortable with coming and sharing not only complaints, but suggestions, things that they are seeing as their hands-on, boots on the ground, doing the work.
Yeah. And that's really one of the main reasons why we're rebranding to Human Resource Department to be focused on people and culture. A little bit more detail there. I'm working with Carrie Black. She's not here today. And we're just going to do an actual campaign internally where we're going to talk more about the things we're doing, invite people in, do some introductions so that employees see HR, see people and culture as a place they can come to have these discussions and we learn more about our population. But that is exactly what we're trying to get accomplished, yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Brett, has any of your data, I know that there's been a sense, especially with our operators, that we've kind of been the training ground for them to go on to other opportunities elsewhere outside of IndyGo. Is any of your data kind of validating that piece? I mean, it kind of feels like it to me with some of this with the turnover, but I'm just interested in your perception of that.
For sure. It hasn't yet, Darius, because we haven't conducted those exit surveys or engagement surveys to ask the employees that data, which is why I want to go another level so that we can start to get qualitative and quantitative data and look at the results to find out where people are, not only why people are leaving, but also where they're going, so that we can then come back in-house and take a look at maybe some things we can do internally as relates to culture, also the benefits and so on and so forth. So that is the next level down, is to gather more information on the why. Now we know what it looks like. Now we got to go another level to find out what it is so that we can then start action planning and setting some strategies around that.
Thanks for that.
other questions? Go ahead.
Couple quick things to add. One, I just wanted to let service committee members know that in our board packet every month, there is a section called department reports that we don't present, but that are always included in your packet. So Britt's report is in there every month, along with those capital projects report. Ops has a very detailed report, public affairs. So I wanted Britt to take this opportunity to highlight specifically his report, but know that all of this data and more will be included in your board packet every month. And then I just have one correction, although it is very true that we do not have an agency-wide mentorship program. I just wanted to make sure that you know we do have a mentorship program for our operators and our mechanics that's very robust and is specific to that. So there are definitely opportunities to do something agency-wide, but I wanted to make sure that we did highlight that as well. Thanks, Brett.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that concludes our agenda. Our meeting is now adjourned. And our next meeting will be held Thursday, April 10th at 8:30 a.m. here in our East Campus boardroom. As always, recordings of our meetings are available on channel 16 and our IndyGo and on our indigo.net/board of directors website. That was a little clunky. Sorry for that, folks who are listening. It's on our website. You can find it. All right. Thanks, everyone.